In this demonstration, we're going to show how Boardwalk can be used to manage a location and staffing application where you have multiple people interacting across multiple locations and multiple companies, and you need to be able to understand for all these different locations who are the individuals that are available, when did they start joining or working with the company, when did they start working on a particular operation, what is their current status, what are the different interactions that are happening around their work applied for the business. And it's important because as you look across your entire staffing, you want to be able to understand for an individual client or for a particular location, how long have they been working with different clients, how long have they been working on particular locations. But if you're emailing spreadsheets back and forth, it's very difficult to be able to collect this information effectively. And Boardwalk addresses this directly because you're able to share the information through a database, and you're able to connect to external information and process that as part of an overall application. So inside this main area here where we're talking about the master projection, you can see, first of all, as I mentioned, multiple locations, multiple deals where people are working across the information, and you want to be able to slice this up and have multiple people interacting with the same information but only seeing their data. And the way we do that is you can take any one of the columns and say, I'd like to be able to have these users interacting with the system, but for example have the CFR client only see the deal information associated with company 1, and maybe a user called CFR business only see the health BPO, or maybe the location Mumbai only see the information associated with Mumbai. So without having to email spreadsheets back and forth, at a database level, you can make the changes and have that information automatically be controlling what people can see and what people can't see. Now the other thing that happens with this is the data is that you need to be able to pull information in from external systems. So in this case, you can see these are reports that are dumped out from existing systems like SAP to say this is the current location of people. And what happens is somebody has to individually go in and open up the data, copy and paste information, switch information around and say what's the resignation status, maybe make adjustments to other columns that have been added for the process. Well, it's very difficult to do this manually, and it's very difficult to understand, has anything changed as somebody's doing this work, or if it's changed, what happened, or what is the current status. Well, Boardwalk includes this capability called the Boardwalk command language, where you can take any set of commands that are done manually today and automate those as a set of macros. Or if you have macros today, you can use those exactly as is, but you can run them using BCL such that when you say run this command, it'll execute the macro and it'll keep track of exactly what happened. I mean, did it execute successfully? Did it need to prompt the user for information? And were there results that happened as a function of running it? So for example, was it successful? What was the final result of the parameter being run? And all of this can be shared through the database as well. So not only are you able to manage and collaboratively work on the staffing information itself, but all the supporting data that's used in order to create the current information that people need to look at can be automatically run as part of the overall process. Now, in order to do that, you come in and say, well, I want to be able to run this particular BCL, and then this will execute all of the adjustments and manipulations based on the data automatically. And you can see here that new rows have been added because some new rows have been added to this exit file that have been brought in. And also you can see here that there's been some adjustments to the cell values that I had as part of the BCL coming in from the information inside of SAP. Now this is only inside my workbook at the moment, and this integration can be fully automated, but for right now I'm just running this through the BCL, and I need to be able to share this with the other users. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to first off make sure that company 1 shows up for this particular row, this new row that's been added, so that the user who's responsible for company 1 sees this data. And then I'm going to say go ahead and submit. At this point the system asks you to log in, and I say okay, I'm the CFR admin, and then it'll say, well, put a comment across this data. So I'm going to say updates for today, and then when I say okay, it looks at the information inside the workbook, automatically detects the changes, push the changes to the database, and then every other user who's associated with the process, when they refresh their workbook, they'll see these changes come in without having to do any copy paste or any manual interaction with the data. So this says submit successful now. So I'm going to switch from the CFR admin, and I'm going to go over and say, well, let's take a look at what the CFR client sees. And remember, this CFR client is only seeing data associated with company 1. Well, now I refresh my workbook, and when I refresh my workbook, it looks at the database and it says, okay, what data has changed? And go find the updated rows and new rows and bring them into my workbook, so I don't have to do any copying and pasting or anything like that in order to see the changes. So as I do this, it looks at the database, it finds the changes, it brings the changes down, and then it'll show me the adjustments to the information that I have inside my workbook, and then I can make my changes and push them back. So as you can see here, here's that new row that we added, right? And we went in and put in company 1, and then the changes that were done here. So you can see here that this says yeah, or managed attrition instead of yes. And this is an existing row of data, and any row of data that's inside the workbook, if somebody changes something, you're able to go in and say, well, I want to see the history of that change. So let me look at a cell history for this, for example, over the past week, and see exactly when that was changed or who's made the changes. And automatically, when you say show me a cell history, you can say, hey, this update was done today. It says who it was done by, and you have a complete history of all those changes. So now I can go in and I can say, well, let's make my modifications, and I'm going to make a change here, and I'm going to change this to be, now instead we'll make this be 427, and then this business line, again, it's going to be finance and accounting BPO, so I'm just going to copy and paste this up here. And you can use pick lists, you can use validations, but now that I've made my changes, I'll say, okay, I'm going to make my adjustments here, and I'll say these are my updates, and then push that information back to the database. Now again, it's going to look at the changes that I've done, only take those changes, push them back to the database, and make them available for all the rest of the users to see what updates have been done. So you can see this can scale across a wide number of users, all working independently inside of Excel, but having the database track the changes. So now if I go back over and say, okay, well, what would the CFR admin see? Then now when I refresh at this level, I'm going to see the changes that were done by that particular client. And at this point, if I refreshed and there was 50 people that had been working, or if the integration had been run automatically at a database level, then those changes would all come in without having me to do any copying and pasting. You're just going in and actually doing refreshes to see the changes. And now when it's completed, it'll say, okay, the updates have been finished. And I can see here that this change was done. You can see where the date changed. And all the information is now automatically consolidated with the latest information in the workbook, consolidated together, and able to drive all of the reports inside here or being pushed to an external system, because the database is now controlling all this information that up until this point had all been done manually via email sent to multiple users without having anything really defining and controlling as a central or a single version of the truth the information that's now being managed inside the Boardwalk database.